Hello, everyone. I'm Sam Eckmann of Gold Derby, here with the incredible composer Hans Zimmer. And this year, two of his scores have been shortlisted by the Academy Awards for Dune and No Time to Die. And in terms of Dune, Hans, I know that you actually passed up an opportunity to work with your frequent collaborator, Christopher Nolan, in order to tackle this film.
Let me set this record straight.
Dude, please do.
Because this is something that keeps being, it's like one false piece of information that keeps getting regurgitated. No, I was on tour. He really wanted to work with Ludwig Göransson on Tenet. It really was, my life had shifted and my interest was being on, I couldn't do it because I was on tour and Dune was happening anyway. Plus, the world changed. We had, we all suddenly, COVID came upon us. But let me make one thing really, really clear. I think Chris and Ludwig are a great. I love Ludwig as a person. I love Chris as a person, and I think it's great that they're working together. It wasn't passing up an opportunity. The thing was, I was touring. That was the problem.
Sure. Well, I only brought it up.
But on the other hand, let me interrupt you here one more time and just quickly say Dune was the dream I had since I was a 13-year-old kid, and I never saw the other movie. I never saw the television series because I had this. It was so important to me that this vision that I had in my head wouldn't be blunted. And then when Denis said, "Have you ever heard of a book called Dune?" I mean, I know, I'm sure you've heard him speak. I mean, there's a gentleness to his delivery, and a humbleness, and I knew just with the way he was asking and knowing him, he was making the movie. He was making the same movie that I was making in my head.
So, I know this has been a great dream come true for you then. What was it about this story, thinking back to when you first read it and to, when Denis pitched it to you, what was it that made you connect with it, that made you say, here's my movie?
Look, I think it's like this. On the surface, it's supposed to be a science fiction story, and then you're coming across a science fiction story that doesn't use computers and that doesn't use technology in your normal way. That is about family. It's about tradition. At the same time, it seems to be a warning about our own global. The climate change problems. It seems to be. It seems to deal with the psychology of what it means to grow up, and what it has an underlying theme of spirituality, which I, as a teenager, of course, was incredibly drawn to when you're searching for those things. The other thing is, ostensibly, it's a book about a young man. Or a noble family and all these sort of things, but really you very quickly realize that the real power in the story is the female characters, and it's the women, and so it's multi-layered. It's like one of those boxes, and you open another box, another box, another box. So it's all of those things. So I cannot answer in I can't give you a simple answer. And I think the reason why it has been so difficult for people to adapt the story is because there is no simple answer. And the reason people have been constantly drawn back to the abyss of, we're going to have a go even if we fail, is because somehow it's a book that gets under your skin, and it, with all its technicalities, with everything it is, it's a deeply emotional journey. You get taken on, and one of the things that I know I know about my friend Denis he is capable of not shying away from those deeply emotional places.
Yeah. Well, the music you've created for it is, appropriately, it's epic. It tells that emotion, and it feels otherworldly. It's a soundscape that
It is
incorporates
otherworldly.
these other planets. So, is there a certain instrument or sound that first inspired you?
Well, look. Let's go back. Let's get. Here's the thing. Denis and I talked about this quite a bit because we both read it as teenagers. And when you're a 13-year-old teenager, there's a certain recklessness that comes with that. And there are two ways you can now approach the subjects that we have held dear for all these years. We can go and look at it with the wisdom and the experience and all those things that we've gathered over the years in the films. I've worked on a few movies, so I can go and do all of that. But that's not what I wanted to do. The book and the story and the material took me right back to the recklessness of a 13-year-old. And the reckless 13-year-old was looking at science fiction movies in those days and going, all right, so if it's a galaxy far, far from here and it's a different time, why am I hearing trumpets and violins and all the trappings of the European orchestra? Is that really how the future is going to be? So one of the things I started to do straight away was build instruments from scratch, invent instruments, and I mean, remember, I'm really a synthesist. I'm one of those guys who had one of the first synthesizers, and when computers came out and they were all word processors, I started tinkering and turned the word processor into a digital synthesizer, and I ruined many a good word processor, put it that way, and put it to nefarious uses of music and art. So this seemed like a perfect opportunity. Furthermore, I have a friend, Chaz Smith, in Northern California, who is a sculptor. He's a musician. He's an incredible welder, and he seems to have some unholy connection to the aeroplane manufacturers. So he makes things out of metals, and he tells me what those metals are. I promise you have no idea. They're metals that you cannot pronounce. You have no idea what they are. But and he lives in this house that the whole house is a resonating chamber. So the whole house is a musical instrument. So there was a lot of that going on. And then there was a lot of Tina Guo, Guthrie Garvin, Lisa Gerard, and the incredible Loire Kotler. The female voices were very important to me. Because I thought the one thing that will not change over time, that actually were two things which I thought wouldn't change over time. One was the human voice. So everything, all the instruments are abstract, all the instruments are, because if you think about it, a musical instrument is always a piece of technology of its time. A violin is a piece of technology of its time. So it was fun to go and make instruments which weren't of our time, that were of a timelessness. Let's put it this way. Yeah. And the only thing that I wanted to keep sacrosanct to a degree was the female voice, not the whole human voice, because the voice you hear at the beginning of the movie, that guy Michael, I really put him through it. And there was more electronics thrown at him than you could possibly imagine. But the human voice was vital, and I felt that, especially Loire with her singing, came really close to this idea that I was trying to have, that even if the mother left the scene, that walked out of frame, that would still, it's like the perfume in the room of a beautiful lady, it lingers on. That the music would always remind you that the strength of the movie was the women. The other part, which I think has made it slightly different, was rather than, normally in a movie you give characters themes and give situations themes, or this planet has a theme and these people have a theme. Blah, blah. And I didn't want to do that with notes, with melodies. What I wanted to do was give different sounds to different parts of the story. So for instance, when Lady Jessica comes in and she is the mother of our hero Paul, but at the same time she is a noble woman and she is married, she's the concubine of the ruler of the house of Atreides. So she speaks as a mother. It is the sound, it is the sound of the mother, and then maybe the sound of the noble house comes in to support her. And then when she draws on her Bene Gesserit powers, there's another sound that gets added to her. So I complete the picture of her character sonically, as opposed to having to do it all in different tunes. So wherever you are, or whoever the characters are, because each character has a hidden part to themselves. There's so many scenes, as you know, which are flashbacks or flash forwards or dreams. And one of the things I love that Denis did was that some of the dreams are prophecies. Some of the dreams will come true, and some of them are just dreams, So some of them are just, some of them are visions of the future, and some of them are just dreams. So I wanted the music to reflect those sort of dreamscapes very, very much. And I think by being abstract in the instrumentation, it helped. It helped that you didn't have the safety net of a violin, or the safety, that we stayed a little abstract.
Yeah. When I was thinking about both of your movies in terms of Dune and No Time to Die, something that sort of united them to me was that both Paul Atreides and James Bond are sort of men of few words. I know Denis, he told me his dream was to make a film with no dialogue. And both films are very visual. And that leaves a lot of room for your score to do a lot of storytelling and take a central place. How does that affect your approach and your work when there is,
Hugely. I mean, if we stick with Dune, one of the things about Dune that Denis and I talked about a lot, we talked about many things a lot. I think you can tell that this was one of those movies where your director was just saying, go off and come back when you've written the score. No, one of the problem areas in Dune is that there's very little dialogue in Dune, overt dialogue in the book, but there's a lot of internal dialogue. And of course, we can't do internal. Well, we can do voiceover, but we didn't want to do voiceover. So part of the music's job is, in conjunction with the actors, to always make you aware that there is more going on in their mind than is necessarily expressed in words, and the beauty of filmmaking is, truly the beauty of filmmaking is, and now I'm going to get all pretentious and get onto my high horse, why cinema is important, and the big screen is important. There are things you can show, there are things that you could feel on the big screen when your eye takes time to wander across the expression and the character's face, and you have to take your time. And you can suddenly read things that a great actor is expressing, and he doesn't have to use words. And if he has a little bit of music to help him, to just guide you into the idea that there's a thought going on that's beyond what am I going to have for dinner, you're doing the job. You can't go, I love those Leonard Bernstein lectures, the Harvard lectures, where he's trying to explain to his audience that no, Beethoven's Pastoral Symphony isn't about milkmaids and cows. Music itself is abstract, but music itself is a cohesive language that makes perfect sense. You know, for instance, I mean, you have the misfortune to talk to speaking to a German in English, and it's my second language as it is. But really, if I want to express certain things, not. I find it much easier to go and speak, you know, speak the language of music. I mean, express things in music, and not in musical terms, but with music. And there are things that you can't express in words. We don't have words for them, and that's how it should be.
Well, I know you previously, you know, you just said that you had a movie in your mind when you first read this book many years ago. How is this experience compared in terms of what entered your mind when you were younger? Are there sounds, is there music that feels like you captured your young self? How much has changed?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's why I come back to this idea of not, of very much on purpose, not trying to be cautious, being reckless, you know, teenagers are fearless. You know, take us to the brink of the abyss, and you know, all we want to do is jump in, right? And so a lot of it was like that. The other thing which was very helpful was that footage would come in, and the footage was as if I had seen it before. You know, so there was like, you know, no, the actors of course were different, the faces were different, but still the everything was, the movements or the light or the shadow or the very often the rhythm, you know, of things were very much how I remembered it when I was reading the book, you know, and you know, one of the things, I mean, another very important part of this, I mean, Theo Green and Mark Mangini, but more important for me, Joe Walker, who I first worked with in 1988, our editor, who started his life out as a composer and actually went to music school as opposed to me, the great pretender. You know, so there was this cohesiveness of vision, of sound, of conversations, of experiments, where ego was put aside completely in the service of, we all wanted to tell the story. We all just wanted to tell the story, and we all wanted to just, we had to get it out of our system. That was the other thing. We've only waited, what, 40 years to go and have a go.
Well, I know I have to let you go soon, but I did want to, I'm wondering, because the story is not quite complete yet. There's a part 2, which I can't wait to see how you know, bring that forward. Do you always
here's the thing, you know, there are 2 people who have to do the same thing. Denis and I, we both had to think the whole thing through. To write the first note, I had to know what the last note is, you know? So one of the things is, one of the things I think that was helpful for Denis was that I did know the book so well. So I was writing into that second part. I was laying pipe. I mean, I've been laying pipe. The whole first part is me really laying pipe, you know, for what I'm going to say in the second part.
Well,
which of course I'm not talking about right now.
Well, we're greatly looking, I know I'm greatly looking forward to see how the story finishes and where your music continues there. So thank you so much.
I'm just so grateful how well it was received. Do you mean? Because we were on a, I think Denis did the right thing by saying it is going to be 2 parts, and at the same time, it was a huge gamble, especially with COVID, especially with going to streaming suddenly. I mean, that really rocked my world, you know, for a moment. That we weren't going to ever get a chance to make part 2. So I'm just extraordinarily grateful that the movie was so well received. That yes, they unleashed us. We're allowed to do part 2, and that's all I could hope for.
Yes, well, it's great work here. Congratulations on all the film success, and we can't wait to watch part 2. Thank you so much for talking with me, Hans.
Thank you for being such a great interviewer.